Okay. Hello guys, how are we all doing? Welcome back to yet another video, folks. Today we are predicting Premier League Week 33 for the football. So much to look forward to. Some big games coming up, including some, these race, Ipswich and Leicester could be relegated in the Premier League this week. Easter weekend. There's so much football to play for. So let's just smash 2,000 likes for that one, right? And please if you are new to the YouTube channel, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Right, first up, Brentford versus Brighton. This is the so-called Moneyball derby between Brentford and Brighton Hove Albion, with Matthew Benham, Toby Bloom rivalry reignited again at the NG Tech Community Stadium. Thomas Frank's Brentford coming into this one of a 1-1 draw with a distracted Arsenal side at the Emirates Stadium last weekend, in a game which the Bees shown very little, by the way, of ambition, and tried to take the game as the susceptible Gunners side. And that means with the West Londoners heading into Easter Saturday on the back of just 6 matches in the Premier League, and now begin this weekend's round of fixtures, sitting in the bottom half of the table. As for Brighton, coached by the youngest tournament manager in the Premier League history, Fabian Herzler, Brighton Hove Albion begin this weekend's round of fixtures, sitting just a place above their up-and-coming opponent, Brentford, in the table. The Seagulls went into March international break on the back of an extremely impressive run of form, but they have since then returned with no victories in 4 matches across all competitions, being held to a 2-2 draw at home by relegation-bound Leicester City last weekend. Brentford are driven to what should be recognised as a good mid-table finish in the Premier League, and same could be said for Brighton and Hove Albion. Both sides have been mirrored each other and extend with their rise to where they are now, and the way they have done it, as they now pushed up against the ceiling of their potential. It will have a real end of the season, but the visitors are firmly in contention for Europe too. So does it still have some intensity and meaning to it? Right, I think that game has drawn written all over it, but I got a sneaky feeling that Brentford will beat Brighton by 2-1. Seems to be a draw or a Brentford win, because they've been a little bit better lately. So, and that's why I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Brentford. Right, now, West Ham versus Southampton. It has been a frustrating start to life under the management of Graham Potter, as West Ham United now welcome already relegated Southampton to the London Stadium this Easter. West Ham United coming into this one on the back of an improved performance at Anfield against champions elite, my team Liverpool, in a game which they were beaten by 2-1, one due to a late winning goal scored by Virgil van Dijk. The Hammers have now slipped to 17th place, 17th ahead of this weekend's round of fixtures, and the Irons have been very underwhelming throughout the Potter era, which began in mid-January, following the sacking of the former Spain boss, Julian Lopetegui. And as for Southampton, an afternoon in which you lose 3-0 at home, and a team with a bigger fish to fry, and that side also missed 2 penalties. It's not perhaps something that should be even as positive afternoon, but after what I've done, what they have done this season, that was the case for Southampton last weekend. And with the interim coach Simon Rusk and the Elm following the sacks of both Russell Martin and Ivan Jurek. The Saints played a more resilient and defensive style of football for much of that defeat to Aston Villa before Villa eventually broke down the door with 3 goals from the substitutes. But, you know, and West Ham haven't really shown any signs of being able to adapt to Potter's style of football, but which is often viewed as fairly complex as they try and build to converse, patterns of play across the pitch, while as they get their loss of their own complexity. And Southampton are attempting to simply things from remaining games in this campaign, but they need to avoid earning the record lowest points tally in the Premier League history. But the Saints will sit back, and West Ham will struggle to consistency. So a low-scoring affair does appear quite likely for this one in the capital city, but I'm going for the Hammers to win 2-0. This should be an easy win for West Ham, but they played well against Liverpool anyway, fair to say. Right, Crystal Palace were in excellent form coming into this on the back of 2 heavy defeats as they welcome AFC Bournemouth side still pushing for European qualification this season. Crystal Palace have been one of the strongest sides in England since mid to late October, but they still have an FA Cup semi-final against Aston Villa to play for the next week at Wembley, but they could do with a response in the Premier League after a poor week, but they raced into a 2-0 lead at the Etihad Stadium against Manchester City last weekend, but eventually scrambled to a 5-2 loss to the faltering defending champions before them being accumulated by 5-0 by Newcastle United at St James's Park in midweek. And as for AFC Bournemouth, they have endured a tough few months with their intense style of football, perhaps leading to fragile and quite a few injuries, but Andalo Alalaro's Cherries got back on track with a much needed victory against Fulham at the Vitality Stadium last weekend. They opened the scoring with the minute against the Cottagers last weekend, and thanks to a strike from Ghana international forward Anthony Semenyo, that means Bournemouth being trucked just inside the top 8, which could be enough for Europa Conference League qualification for next season. Crystal Palace need to reset themselves, establish some form ahead of the visitors of Bournemouth to Selhurst Park this weekend. The visitors will try and play an intense style of football as ever. Last week will hope to be launching pad to finish the season with a flourish, while Palace looks ahead to their biggest game of the campaign. Bournemouth can get Europe with 8th this season, but that will be relevant on Palace not winning the Cup, but siding the away team. That may be a value bet for this one in Croydon, but I'm going for a 1-1 draw. Both of them not playing at their best at the moment, but that's why it's very tough one to predict this. No. Right. This is the final visit of Manchester City to Goodison Park this weekend, as David Moyes' much improved Evertonians welcome top 5 chasing City to Merseyside on Easter Saturday. David Moyes' Everton continue their impressive form under the Scotsman in his second stint in charge with a 1-0 defeat of the Champions League chasers Nottingham Forest at the City Ground last weekend, courtesy of a late Amdalo Doucouré's strike. But Moyes later then that he would like to see the Toffees to do something akin to what Forest have done this season and challenging for the top 4, top 5 next year. They have suffered just 2 defeats in 13 Premier League matches since the return of Moyes. Right. As for Man City, many would suggest there were signs of Manchester City returning to their best form last weekend, but they will probably be the 15th time, and that being widely said. They came from 2-0 down to defeat Crystal Palace by 5-2 at the Etihad Stadium. They were generally excellent in terms of their attacking prowess, and departing Kevin De Bruyne, showing signs of what they have been for a very long time. However, once again defensively, even at 2-0 down, they looked susceptible to nearly every counter-attack. So Everton have proven themselves difficult to beat, but when David Moyes initially came in, they shown signs of improvement in the attack too. But they have though now failed to score more than solitary goal in the game that their last 6 matches. They've now faced a Manchester City side that had laboured to some tenders results this season, and Everton will sneak to frustrate them, but the visitors may not be their weakness as exposed. They can be by other sides. But I'm going for Everton 1, Man City 2. Right, the game of the weekend. In the Premier League season with little to play for ahead of the final few weeks, this is one of the new games of significance of both sides for push for Champions League qualification. Aston Villa comes into this one on the back of a heartache in the Champions League in midweek. So, despite stirring a comeback to defeat PSG by 3-2 in this second leg, the Villains were still eliminated, having lost by 5-4 on aggregate. The Villains still have an FA Cup semi-final against Crystal Palace to look forward to. They have also moved back firmly into contention for a top 5 spot in the Premier League due to 9 victories in their last 10 matches across all competitions. As for Newcastle, even with Eddie Howe's in hospital battling for pneumonia, Jason Tindall and Newcastle United have remained in relentless form, but they have continued in midweek. They dispatched Crystal Palace by 5-0 at St James's Park in the game in hand in midweek, but they backed up hammering Manchester United by 4-1 in midweek. And now means the Magpies have won their last 6 matches in all competitions, including ending their long trophy drought by beating Liverpool in the final of the EFL Cup last month. And both of these sides heading into the final few weeks of the game in excellent form, with a real chance of the Champions League qualification. The visitors could finish as high as runner-ups this season too, but Villa may rotate, but there's a lot of depth, so remaining very strong, while as the Magpies will be as intense as exciting on the encounter and attack as ever too, with their vertical style of football. But their entertaining, rare, meaningful game is to be expected for this one in the second city. But I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be goals at Villa Park. Watch this space. Right, Ipswich versus Arsenal. Way too late in the season, Ipswich have found some fluency and some form as the relegation-bound Tractor Boys now welcome an Arsenal side on the back of a big midweek. Ipswich have dropped away too many points throughout the season, but it has shown they have been able to be competitive without overall effortlessness this year, and that continued last weekend with a 2-2 draw at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea last weekend. And the Tractor Boys went 2-0 up before half time in that clash, but the Blues, thanks to strikes from Paraguay international striker Jolo Ensos and defender Ben Johnson, but Chelsea fought back with second half goals from Jadon Sancho and Axel Turnbow own goal. As for Arsenal in midweek, Arsenal put in impressive and mature performance and conferentially knocking out defending champions Real Madrid out of the Champions League at the quarter-final stage by 5 goals to 1 on the aggregate with 2-1 win at the Bernabeu. Bukayo Saka endured a fairly humiliating penalty miss early on the second leg, but the England international then produced an excellent second half finish from before Gabriel Martinelli won the match on the night and deep into the second half stoppage time. And Ipswich may be relegated, but Ipswich Town have shown ability to take the game to any team in division, but they have taken the lead on several occasions, but they will now sneak with the pressure off as relegation nearest closer to being mathematically confirmed. To be exploited by the emotion, physical, fragile that Arsenal may be feeling, the Gunners will likely to heavily rotate at Portman Road. It could well be a good bet with the host for this one on Easter Sunday, but no, I'm sorry. I think Arsenal will beat Ipswich 2-0 to confirm that Ipswich will likely to be relegated if Wolves and West Ham win their games. Right. We have a West London derby between Fulham and Chelsea. Right. We have a West London derby taking place at Craven Cottage as Fulham push for European qualification against the Chelsea side. That's been underwhelming for a few months now, but Marco Silva has been subject of links of Tottenham Hotspur for this summer, but the Portuguese coach has enjoyed an impressive spell and once again another season in charge of Fulham as the Cottagers now chase for European qualification this season. However, their push for the top 8 potential Europa Conference League was dealt a bit of a blow in midweek as they suffered a 1-0 defeat to FC Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium due to a strike from Antonio Semedo in the first 60 minutes. And Chelsea, since mid-December, Chelsea have been underperforming, and that even continued in midweek as the Blues suffered a 2-1 loss to Warsaw in the second leg of their Europa Conference League quarter-final time, winning by 4 goals to 2 on aggregate, but they're through to the semi-finals of the Conference League. But Enzo Maresca's side also once again struggled in the Premier League last weekend as they shared a 2-2 draw with Ipswich Town at Stamford Bridge in a game which supporters loudly expresses their discontent at going 2-0 down at home to relegation-bound opposition. So Fulham have been frustrating for their supporters this season, with some excellent performances and results almost always being followed by deflated defeat, and that lack of consistency is exactly what they are mid-table. Good run will likely to give him a top 8 finish though, and now they have a game whereby they have done well against the bigger side at Craven Cottage, and lack of form of Chelsea apparent trust in the coach, and would suggest a home side win is a good value bet for this one. And I'm going for Fulham to win 2-1 because Chelsea, very up and down. Ruben Amorim's Manchester United pulled off a remarkable victory in the Europa League in midweek, but the Red Devils remain one of the weakest iterations of the club this season. In midweek, with the aggregate scoreline being at 2-2, Manchester United went into a 2-0 lead at home to Lyon in the second leg of the maybe French 2, whatever it is, Europa League quarter-final before Lyon produced a comeback to take the game into extra time despite going down to 10 men. And then, despite being down to 10 men, Lyon went into a 4-2 lead in Manchester in the second half of the extra time. However, 3 late goals from Bruno Fernandes, Kobbie Mainoo and then Harry Maguire, Manchester United produced one of the all-time European comebacks. That was bloody awesome. But ever since the appointment of the former Porto boss, Victor Piore, in mid-December, Wolverhampton Wanderers have been much improved as they try to put themselves further into the middle of the table and well clear of the bottom 3 relegation places. And that impressive run of form continued last weekend as they defeated Tottenham Hotspur by 4-2 at Molineux thanks to an own goal, as well as strikes from Jorgen Strandal-Lawson and Rane Atenore, as well as returning Mateus Cunha. Right. Manchester United produced a remarkable comeback in midweek, and that will overshadow an hour of football that been on the verge of one of their more humbling and embarrassing defeats in decades, and choked full of humiliation losses watching Wednesday last weekend as they were hammered by 4-1 by Newcastle United at St James's Park. But Wolves simply looks for caress and well adjusted than United under Piero. But even the away form will fancy their chances of exploiting a disorganised side, and they may be feeling some physical and emotional fragile at Old Trafford this weekend. But I'm going for United to win 2-1, but home and run. Right, 2 more games before we wrap up the video. Ruben Vassanossori is set to oversee the relegation of Leicester City as the Foxes now welcome a Liverpool side that can clinch the Premier League title this week to the Keating Power Station if Ipswich beat Arsenal. But Leicester City ended a run of form whereby they haven't scored since January by earning themselves a surprising 2-2 draw against the European chasing Brighton at the Amex Stadium on the south coast last weekend. The Foxes went behind to 31st minute penalty by João Pedro before then equalises a few minutes later. Stephanie Maduvi, another João Pedro penalty, put them behind again, but they earned a point in the 74th minute via Caliber Aluko. And Liverpool have enjoyed a difficult month or so. The Champions League elimination, EFL Cup final defeat, rumours surrounding the exit of Trent Alexander-Arnold, and some average form in the Premier League, but the Reds can still clinch their 20th English title this weekend. From a Liverpool perspective, they put in another lacklustre performance against the struggling West Ham United at Anfield last weekend, with Luis Diaz opened the score in the first half. Well, great credit from Lucho, the way he's been playing. And then mixed up between Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson, produced an equaliser from the former and then won the game late on. Yeah, Leicester City finally got themselves a goal, and 2 of them as well as the point last weekend. But they remain arguably the worst team in the league. But they're stinky. Because they, frankly, league tables do often lie. Despite what they will say, Liverpool, though, they've been most consistent. We have been most consistent. And the compliment team this season, if Ipswich defeated Arsenal before this game, the Reds will be crowned champions regardless of the permutations. And a comfortable Liverpool to be expected to win this one quite comfortably. And I'm going for, I think Liverpool will smash Leicester about 3-0. I predicted 3-0 Liverpool. Yeah. And finally, Tottenham Hotspur versus Nottingham Forest. This should be quite fun and entertaining encounter at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as the Europa League semi-finalist Spurs now take on the top 4 challengers Nottingham Forest. In midweek, Nottingham Forest reached the semi-finals of the Europa League with a 2-1 aggregate victory over Frankfurt on the night, but Spurs edged past their Bundesliga opponents by 1-0 thanks to a late Dominic Solanke penalty. But the North Londoners have struggled throughout the campaign in the Premier League and could realistically finish as low as 17th this season, and their poorest domestic form continued last weekend. They have suffered a 4-2 defeat to Wolverhampton Wanderers at Molineux. And as for Nottingham Forest, under the management of the former Tottenham Hotspur and Wolverhampton Wanderers boss, Nuno Espirito Santo, Nottingham Forest have enjoyed a very impressive campaign as they remain trapped inside top 5 and the Champions League qualification spots. But the visitors do, though, coming into this one on the back-to-back defeats with a 2-1 loss to Aston Villa at Villa Park, and being followed by a 1-0 loss to Everton at City Ground last weekend due to a late strike from Andelo Doucouré for the Toffees. Right, Tottenham Hotspur quite simply have to put themselves into a position whereby there is simply no motivation for them to win this match, with their entirely focus on the Europa League, like where they have an excellent chance of reaching the final, but they play against Norwegian Lise side Bordeaux Glimt in the semi-finals. And Nottingham Forest, on the other hand, have seen the gap between themselves and those outside of the top 5 significantly. But they're now, considering position, but this could be like a brilliant opportunity to earn some respite from those, concerns before their FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City next weekend. I'll go for Spurs 1, Nottingham Forest 2. That's my predictions then for Premier League Week 33 for football. Leave on your comments below. Welcome back to my channel. Subscribe to MK Days or K Diaries here. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Good night, everyone.